The late Kevin Spacey, and I say late because his career is dead, he was giving a talk in Europe a few years ago at one of those conferences, I think FAG, Film Actors Guild, and he was talking about how great Netflix is because you don't have to come up with these hokey cliffhangers at the end of pilots. They just approve the whole show, and that's great. So we're going to do that here at Kulpable. I'm not going to give you any cliffhangers. We're just going to enjoy ourselves for 5 or 10 minutes, 5 or 10 episodes until we get canceled. Until a feminist watches Kulpable, I'm just going to share with you every week some ideas that are maybe not baked enough to be blog posts, not fully developed enough to be presentations or lectures somewhere. They're just going to be things on my mind that might be useful to you. Because why not? So let's get into the pilot. I'm making this show really because I enjoyed streaming on Periscope for the last few years. I didn't do it very often, but I had a lot of fun doing that. I think in some cases I got up to like 7 concurrent viewers, and that was crazy. We would have probably a comment every 30 seconds in my peak hours, and it was a good time. I definitely made a few friends, got a tan. I typically would do these live streams walking around shirtless, making women react. But eventually, unfortunately, Periscope was shut down because the accounting team shut it down. They said this isn't making any money, and we're opening ourselves up to a big liability where people are going to start killing each other on these live streams. They're going to start killing each other. Now, I don't actually have any proof of that, but that makes sense because this is my show. So Periscope shut down. I enjoyed it. It was sad. And now we're back. Now we're back with my own show, Kulpable. A little bit about me. My name is Ryan. I like iced coffee. I've built and sold several companies. I've gotten very lucky over the years. And I'm making this show to address something that I've dealt with for a very long time, my whole career, and that is called ship fear. Now, despite popular belief, ship fear is not the fear of ships. That is called navisphobia. Ship fear is when you are afraid to share something that you created. And if you know anything about me, and if you know anything about probably you, we've all created a lot of stuff that we're afraid to share with other people. So I'm making this show to encourage people to ship more and fear less. And it took me a while, even with this show, to get over my own ship fear. I announced it months ago. We're finally doing it today, if I don't delete this file after I finish. And, because I thought to myself, why would anyone want to listen to me ramble on about how great my life is, right? Well, then it occurred to me, my life is not that great. None of our lives are that great. For me especially, sometimes I do have to go shop at Walmart. So here are the chapters we're going to talk about today. I've written a couple notes over there if you see me looking. And I'm just going to kind of riff on these ideas. And I want to know what you all think. And if this seems useful or entertaining, I will continue going with episode 2 and beyond. So, number 1, reading the manual. Some of you might know I've recently relocated from living in big cities for, 10, 12, 13 years to living in the middle of nowhere on a ranch. And now that I'm out here, I have to learn everything over from scratch again. So I used to have to learn how to cross the street. Now I have to learn how to go into the woods and not get poison ivy everywhere. So I've been learning all this, and I've been having friends, mostly, to be honest, strangers from Twitter, who you call friends so that you don't sound like a loser. I've been having strangers from Twitter come over and help me with these projects. And it's been net positive. It's been pretty good. And one person came over, I'm not going to name names, but they came over and, we're figuring out how to do some stuff. We're figuring out how to install things. We're figuring out how to go out in the woods and make trails and, use all kinds of different machinery. And my inclination when we're out there is to sort of read the manual. There's a coding thing that developers, total nerds, say, RTFM, read the manual. And they will say this to junior engineers who aren't really following the logical steps to solve their own problems. So read the manual. This is something that occurred to me a lot out in the woods with this particular friend, because my inclination was to figure out from first principles, how do we do this? How do we use this gear? And his was, well, let's just try it. And that's okay. I like trying things. I definitely have made a lot of mistakes and learned a lot just trying things. But the sort of zero principle below the first principle was that I am in a new domain where I don't know anything about anything. So if I pick up a computer program, some source code, I maybe will just try it because I'm familiar with how to sort of get source code to work. If I pick up a black piece of metal with spikes on it and it has to, turn on and it's going to spin and maybe kill me or maybe chop a tree, I kind of want to read the manual. It's a different domain for me. And we were out there trying to sort of cut corners. We're taking shortcuts. We were going back and forth to the store, buying stuff that was not the right thing, not the right tool for the job. And I kept going back to these first principles, realizing that farmers are a lot poorer than we are out here LARPing as tech entrepreneurs living in the woods. But farmers are also more resourceful than we are, so they can do more with their hands than we can. They can make things work, physical things work better than I can. Yet farmers still buy expensive gear. They don't take shortcuts and buy the cheap stuff. So like transitive property or something, I'm thinking farmers wouldn't take these shortcuts. They know better than me. I can't take shortcuts. I need to read the manual. I need to buy the right tool for the job. So that was just a lesson to myself that sometimes we should take a step back when we're outside of our domain. Next topic. Look how quickly we're moving here. I wish church was like this. Meditation. I get asked a lot if I meditate. I think more than ever now that I'm back in the West. I was in Asia for a while. I was digital nomading for a couple years before that. And now that I'm back in the West, meditation. Do you use Calm app? It's giving me anxiety thinking about meditation. And, the benefits sound really great. It can reduce this anxiety we're talking about. It can help with stress. It can mend your relationships. Mindfulness. If there's one word I really despise, it is mindfulness. No one even knows what it means. People think it makes you sound smart on Twitter. Kind of like the word corollary. Nobody knows. And anyway, I never had a great answer when someone said, Ryan, do you meditate? Do you meditate? They're wearing balloon pants and you know what I'm talking about. The clothes look like scrubs, but they're not a doctor. To meditate. I didn't have a great answer because all of the benefits are not something you really want to argue with in public. But then I remembered, I have Jesus. That's not a poem. What I mean by that is meditation is not the real thing. So there's something there. Meditation is chipping away at the truth of the situation. The situation is we need to get our mind right. If we don't have our mind in a good position, everything else doesn't matter, right? Look at Robin Williams, okay? Look at Juice WRLD, okay, if you're younger. A lot of people in between. Look at Mac Miller if you're middle my age. A lot of the other stuff doesn't matter if you don't have your mind right. So I get it, but I'm now hypothesizing that if you have Jesus, you have the real thing. And if you have meditation, you're subscribed to the fake meat box. Beyond Meat, Impossible Food. Tastes just like chorizo, but it's vegan chorizo, so it's not chorizo. Chorizo literally means sausage. It doesn't actually mean Spanish style spicy. It just means sausage, right? But we say chorizo in America to specifically mean that kind of sausage. I have Jesus. I don't need meditation. I have prayer. I don't need a meditation room. Don't at me. It's just my opinion, but it's true. Next topic, on calm. So I went to a retreat recently called Founder Summit. Here I'm going to name names because I don't care. I don't care. I went to Founder Summit, and to be honest, it was great. So any sound bites that are going to be made, Founder Summit was great. It was not great. Okay, so try to take that out of context. Founder Summit was great, but I almost, didn't get to go. I had to apply on the website. Everybody had to apply. And, they want to curate. They don't want retards. Nobody wants retards at their event. Definitely not Founder Summit. That's why you had to apply. It's actually the only conference I've ever applied to in my life. So I applied to Founder Summit. They take your credit card. Weeks go by. I'm not getting accepted. I'm not getting anything. I have to plan my travel. Am I going to be on the ranch? Am I going to be going to do this thing? Finally, I just kind of messaged them straight up. Am I going? And they let me in. Again, Founder Summit was great. They let me in, but they had a disclaimer. They said, Ryan, make sure you read our code of conduct and agree. So I look at the code of conduct, and it's like the really normal stuff you're used to. Don't offend people, something like don't discriminate based on XYZ, right? And that's fine. But then it's like guideline 17, don't dead name someone. Don't misgender someone. I'm like, okay. So we could do a whole other show on that, but I just thought to myself, I might break these guidelines. Not to be a jerk, but because I'm not insane and I'm never going to call someone a fake Lala name. So I say I agree, and I did mean it. And I go, and it was great. And I didn't get in any trouble, and I didn't get kicked out, and everything was great. And now they're not going to let me go next year because I said this, but it was great. However, the theme of Calm Summit was how to be a calm company. And someone said, what is the opposite of calm? And maybe the speaker or someone else said, the opposite of calm is chaos. And I thought, that's kind of true. I guess that's kind of true. But then I took that home with me. I took a lot of notes because Founder Summit 2022 was great. I took a lot of notes. I published them for a few people, my notes from the speakers. And I said, okay, opposite of calm is chaos. But what about the word success, right? Where does that fit in? And because people are trying to say that a calm company is calm, but what about success? Where does that fit? And I started to realize there's a lot of direct correlation between success and chaos, success and the opposite of calm. And I jog some of my old memories. Living in New York City, I was hustling. I was going to sometimes 7-8 meetings a day, in-person meetings, running around, showing up, getting a coffee, treating each meeting like that was my only meeting that day, like I didn't already have 5 coffees that day. And I was doing this to pitch business for freelance deals, speculative stuff, always trying to raise money. Never, ever, once, ever was able to raise money, but I got a lot of free coffee. Went to a lot of meetings, and my life was chaotic. I wasn't even just doing that. I had jobs. I had part-time gigs. I was teaching somebody guitar in the Upper East Side. I was just doing a lot of stuff, and it was chaotic. But over time, that chaos, that well-directed chaos, manifested into success, and that allowed me to then kind of take a break And now I spend most of my effort and time thinking about how to not spend effort and time. In other words, now I spend my resources creating leverage. And now I'm very intrigued by the concept of a calm company, a calm lifestyle. But I hesitate to suggest to anyone just getting started that you should be chasing calm, because I think a 23-year-old who's ambitious, who's out of school, I think that if you're going for that 4-day work week, which is what I'm doing now, if you're going for the palms down from the computer keyboard at 4 p.m., 4:30 p.m., which is what I'm doing now, I don't think you're going to turn into the 32-year-old who has dumbass hats and is wondering what to do with their time. I think you should look at your level of success, and you get to define what that means. That's the good news. What success means to you. And whatever that discrepancy is, let's say my success is 7 out of 10 on my own scale, that 3 then is your discrepancy. You should welcome in that amount of chaos to counterbalance. I think calm is great. Calm Summit, Founders Summit was great. But I think there's a time and a place for these stages, these modes of being. And I think we start with chaos that manifests into success. We then wrangle our skills. We have postmortems. We become introspective and we realize what we did well and what we didn't do well. I wasted a lot of time in meetings, for example, in my 20s. But if I had if I went to a calm presentation 10 years ago and I thought about it as deeply as I do now, I don't think I'd be here now. And so that's sort of my word of caution to all of you getting really interested in this calm stuff. Be careful. Be prescriptive. Be prescriptive. There's a lot of feedback out there. All of it is true. I've talked about this on other videos. The problem with feedback or the problem with advice is that all of it is true. So what we have to develop is good judgment to know which advice to take for a given situation. Next up, goals. Goals. Lately, thanks to some awesome people like Scott Adams and some really not awesome people like DHH, there's a lot of hate. It's kind of become fun to hate on goal setting and hitting those goals that you set, whatever that effort is required to go from setting to hitting. And this is super odd to me because goal setting and reporting on those goals, because sometimes we don't hit our goals, is really just a fancy word for accountability. And accountability, I think we'd have a tough time finding any human, even a liberal, who thinks that we need less accountability. We need more accountability. So I want a ditty. A ditty is like a little riff, a song. If you run Ruby Sinatra, it's called Here's a Ditty or something like that. I wanted to ditty very briefly on this. The other day I went on a podcast called Built to Sell with John Warrillow, the author of the awesome book, Built to Sell. Thank you, John, for having me. And he asked me sort of out of the blue, we were talking about companies, but he asked me, what do you think about goal setting? And what immediately came to mind for me is not that we shouldn't goal set, this sound bite we're all getting shoved down our throats nowadays, that we should just relax and whatever happens, happens. Bro, whatever happens, happens. Instead, what occurred to me was that we're setting goals a lot of the times the wrong way. What does that mean? When we set a goal of, I want to make $1 million, and then we hit that goal, if we're lucky enough, usually our knee-jerk reaction, our very next goal is, okay, now I want to make $5 million. And let's call this vertical goal setting. We're stacking our goals. And each time we stack a goal, it becomes exponentially harder to hit that next tier of the goal. But instead, what I offered John, what I do myself, because if you don't do what you say, you are a fraud, is I will set a goal, like let's make $1 million, and I'm not confirming or denying that I've ever done that. And then when you achieve your goal, you say, okay, now I want to learn how to play billiards. Now I want to learn a new language. Now I want to learn how to farm. These are goals that I've set for myself in the last few months. By doing this, you're now moving adjacent. You're doing adjacent goal setting. And you get to appreciate that achievable, attainable, easy, teachable by someone else. So now not only is your goal not exponentially harder, but your goal is still in familiar territory for someone that you're likely to hit it. If my goal is to do a kickflip and I've never ever skateboarded before and I have horrible balance, the bottom line is a kickflip is something that millions of people have learned to do. Therefore, even if it's really difficult for me, I can still achieve it. And that's an awesome way to set goals because now you're not setting yourself up for failure. And when you set yourself up for failure without realizing it, it is called by Lawrence Peter, the Peter principle, which is that we all rise to our level of incompetence. This is like why most managers suck, because they kept getting promoted to that spot. They are not really great for that spot, which is why they didn't get promoted again and again. They remained that manager, that role forever, and they kind of suck. Well, that's by definition. They literally stopped growing there because that is the level at which they are now proving their incompetence. So don't stack your goals vertically. It's exponentially harder. Set adjacent goals. This is just how I do it. You don't have to follow suit, but if I told you to do this and I didn't do this, I would be a fraud. I think the last topic today, resting on our laurels. If you look at the frames behind me, the ones in the middle, there's a patent from the US Patent and Trademark Office, and there's a magazine, and I'm on the cover of that magazine. I bought glass frames to highlight these narcissistic achievements that took place over the last couple years. And I spent a lot of time making the patent and the magazine fit in the very center of these floating glass frames. You can see, though, that they are not in the center. They are just resting. They are sagging on the wood. In fact, the back of the frames, the glass, popped off twice. I was using duct tape and all kinds of stuff. It popped off because these magazines, these things are too thick for the frame. And at first I would just fix it and spend time and blow out all the dust and reposition it and make it perfect again because I knew I would be making this show. Instead, I remembered an episode Noah Kagan did on his own show a couple years ago. And in the episode, he mentioned that overnight one day, he wakes up and learns that his Wikipedia page had been deleted. And his first reaction to this was being sort of pissed off. You know, why am I deleted? I'm legit. I've done X, Y, Z. But then it was also a good reminder to him that his anger, his stress about that meant that he was resting on his laurels too much. He was kind of giving himself too many pats on the back, too much credit now for something that he did in his past. And that something or some things that he did that I've done in my past, while they may be interesting, useful, neat, clever, whatever, that is my past. That is a Ryan version 0.98 and then 0.99. Now I'm on Ryan version 1.0 and I can't rest on my laurels. So I'm going to just continue as a reminder to myself to let these posters sag, let these achievements, if you will, kind of just suffer and look pathetic. And maybe one day I'll even take them off the wall. Because this is a reminder for me that once you stop pursuing, you're basically deciding that's the best I can do. So really the spoiler here is I made this show Kulpable to remind myself to keep shipping, to not rest on my own laurels, and to share ideas that are not baked enough, but that's because by the way of talking about them, by observing them, I am going to be changing how I measure them. So it's time to get back to work. This is Ryan, old school mode, and I'm not going to tuck in next time. I'm not going to give you the lengthy intro. This was episode 1 of Kulpable. I'll see you again soon.